Euclid, the Man Who Invented Geometry, by Shu Rayner. Euclid was an ancient Greek mathematician who is often called the father of geometry. He lived between 323 and 283 BC in Alexandria in northern Egypt during the reign of Ptolemy I. Euclid's book, called Elements, is one of the most influential books in the history of mathematics. It was used to teach geometry well into the 20th century. Euclid had a really bright idea. He worked out his theory of geometry from very basic principles, which he called axioms. When he was sure that an axiom was true and could be proved, then he used that knowledge as a base to create and prove his next new idea. In this way, from very simple ideas, he developed the Euclidean geometry we still use today. Axioms are the basis of how science and mathematics still work to this day. Chapter 1. A long time ago, about 2,300 years ago, to be a little more precise, there lived a man in ancient Greece called Euclid. He looked nothing like this drawing. This is just an idea of how he might have looked. Over 1,000 years after Euclid died, someone else thought he might have looked like this. Euclid was one cool ancient Greek. Euclid wrote the first great book on geometry. It must have been a really good book because schools were still using it to teach geometry well into the 20th century. Euclid's book was called Euclid's Elements. All of the best ideas are simple and brilliant, and Euclid had a really simple and brilliant idea. Euclid thought he would explain stuff by starting at the very beginning. He would find something very simple that everyone could agree with. Then he would build on that simple idea. Euclid decided that a simple point, a fixed position in space, was a good place to start. You can think of a point as if it were a cross on a map that shows where treasure has been buried. Euclid explained this to his friends, and they all said, "What a simple and brilliant idea! We get the point." "Now," said Euclid, "let's make another point. We'll call the first point A and the second point B." "Okay," said everyone. "We're happy with that. Now, let's connect the 2 points together with a line," said Euclid. "The shortest distance between the 2 points is called a segment of a line, but I'm just going to call it a line." "A line is a thing that has length but no width or height," said Euclid. "A segment is a part of a line with a point at each end." "Yes," everyone said, "we understand." "I'm going to call this simple idea an axiom," said Euclid. "An axiom is something everyone can agree with, a starting point from which we can begin to work out other stuff." "That is so cool," said Euclid's friends. "Have you got any more great ideas like that?" "Lots," said Euclid. "But that's enough for today. Tomorrow I'll show you what happens if we have 3 points instead of 2. "Cool," said his friends. Then they all drew diagrams in the sand. Some drew wiggly lines, some drew zigzags, some wrote their names. But whatever they did, they had to agree that the shortest distance between 2 points was made by a straight and simple segment of a line. Axiom. An axiom is something that everyone agrees is obvious and true. You can use the axiom you have already proved as a starting point to try out new ideas and theories. Chapter 2. Geometry is all about relationships, said Euclid. "Ooh," said Euclid's friends. "Euclid's got a girlfriend." "Not that kind of relationship," Euclid sighed. Euclid drew 2 lines exactly the same length and made them exactly the same distance apart. "These lines are exactly the same length as each other," Euclid said. "That makes them equal, and that's a relationship. The lines are equal to each other." If you carry on drawing these lines in the same direction forever and ever, Euclid explained, the lines will never ever meet because they will always be the same distance apart. We will call them parallel lines. Being parallel to each other is another relationship. Ah, said Euclid's friends, but what happens if the lines are not always the same distance apart? If you carry on drawing lines that are not always the same distance apart, they will eventually meet, like this, said Euclid. Now the lines have a new relationship. Because they are eventually going to meet or converge, we'll call them converging lines. Then Euclid drew two equal lines which were joined together at one end. These lines are still equal in length, said Euclid, but they now have a new relationship. One is kind of flat, like the horizon. We can call that a horizontal line. The other line is an incline. It looks like it's going up, like a hill. We can call the steepness of the hill, or the amount of hilliness, the angle between the two. That's really neat, said Euclid's friends, or something like that. But that's not all, said Euclid. We now have 3 points, A, B, and C. The two lines are connected at A. We could join the two other points, B and C, with a new line. Amazing, said Euclid's friends. Now each line has a relationship with another line, and those relationships are angles. So we have 3 points and 3 lines and 3 angles. I think we should call this new shape a triangle. Oh, Euclid's friends sounded disappointed. For some reason, that just doesn't sound right, they said. Remember, we are ancient Greeks. How about triangle? Euclid suggested. Oh, yes, Euclid's friends cheered. That sounds much better. Okay, Euclid said triumphantly. A shape with 3 points and 3 lines and 3 angles is called a triangle. Chapter 3. If you read the last chapter about angles, said Euclid, you will remember that 2 lines which are joined at the same point will have an angle between them unless they are on top of each other. Okay, said Euclid's friends. They wondered where Euclid was going with this idea. If you start with both lines completely horizontal and on top of each other, and then begin raising one of the lines at one end, you will create a sharp, pointy angle where they are connected at A. We shall call this an acute angle, said Euclid. Cute! Cheered Euclid's friends. No, not cute, Euclid said firmly. Acute. Okay. Euclid's friends laughed. They did enjoy winding Euclid up when he was explaining things. Keep raising the line till it gets to the very top, just before it goes over to the other side, said Euclid. We shall call this a right angle, and we'll draw a little square at the bottom to let everyone know. Right, said Euclid's friends. Euclid gave them a look. If you carry on rotating the line, the angles won't be so pointy anymore, said Euclid. We will call this an obtuse angle. The angle gets more and more obtuse until both lines are horizontal. Then the 2 lines make one line, which is twice as long as when they started. The line can rotate all the way around until it comes back to where it started, Euclid explained. Now, look what happens when we follow the journey made by the point at the other end of the line. Euclid's friends watched in amazement as Euclid drew the shape. It's a circle, they exclaimed. Well done, said Euclid, glad his friends had been paying attention. Do you remember I said that geometry was all about relationships? Well, the lines have a special relationship to a circle. The line that goes from the middle of the circle to the outside is called the radius, and the line that goes across and right through the center point is called the diameter. What's the outside called? Asked Euclid's friends. The circumference, said Euclid, saying the first thing that came into his head that sounded circly. That's amazing, said Euclid's friends. It is, Euclid agreed. Hey, I hope you guys enjoyed my reading of Euclid, the man who invented geometry. I read 3 chapters because I felt like that got to a spot where you could stop and teach a lesson